It may be hard to believe, given the way the current season is going, but last year the Boston Red Sox did win the World Series, and that means the traditional celebratory visit to the White House. But unlike the Sox's last White House trip after the 2013 World Series, this one's not all jokes and American flag jackets. This year, several members of the team and one important member of the coaching staff have decided to skip the trip. Manager Alex Cora told a newspaper in his native Puerto Rico that he wouldn't be visiting the White House while the island is still struggling to recover from Hurricane Maria. And on NESN over the weekend, he said, while the White House has helped, it hasn't been enough.
We still have a long ways to go, and that's our reality. So, it's pretty tough, to go celebrate when we're in where we at.
Mookie Betts, David Price, and several other players of color have also said they won't attend, but so far the rest of the team is still planning to go, including some key members of the team's front office, owner John Henry and President and CEO Sam Kennedy. So, is this an unfortunate blurring of the lines between sports and politics, or another reminder that the Trump era has changed everything? And what is at stake for the Red Sox, given the team's fraught history when it comes to race? Joining me are Dan Lebowitz, the executive director of Northeastern University's Center for the Study of Sport and Society, and Tina Opie, associate professor of management at Babson College. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So when I hear those comments from Alex Cora and read other comments he's made, I hear a guy who is making a muted but clearly political statement, because obviously the backdrop to the Puerto Rico recovery is President Trump saying time and again, they've been given all this money, but their leaders are all screwed up. They're not moving as fast as they should be. Do you guys agree with that? Is he political there, even if he's sort of political in a hushed way?
What do you think? What do we mean by political? I don't think that he is trying to force a wedge on this issue. I do think he has values and an identity that's connected with Puerto Rico. He mentioned that his mother sent him a text, and that it was a very powerful one, and that mattered when he was making his decision. So I think this is something that was very important to him. Puerto Rico obviously is important to him, and for that reason he decided not to go to the White House.
Sound right to you, Dan?
I think also that he's making a great leadership statement, right? I think that really what we're looking at here is when we think about sport, global sport, it's really the messaging of a global sport is inclusion. Look at the Red Sox, look at the makeup of their team, look at the NBA, look at the NFL. These are all portals of inclusion for a number of people that have been historically disenfranchised over generation and generation. Okay, so when this is a teaching moment for a lot of people about what privilege looks like versus what disenfranchisement looks like. We've never had reparations in this country for all the disenfranchisement, that cross-generational disenfranchisement. We have people making a statement about a bastion of exclusion that appears to be the White House at the moment, and a monument to inclusion, which happens to be global sport. And I don't find that to be political as opposed to a statement about we're all better when we collectively rise together and when we see each other as brotherhood.
I'm glad you guys de-simplified my question the way you did. I hadn't intended to use political as a pejorative, but I know it could sound that way. So thank you both for fleshing out your thoughts the way you did. What do we make of David Price? David Price, just for people who might have missed it up until now, he initially said he wasn't going to go to the White House because, he put it, it's baseball season. Then Steve Buckley, the baseball writer for The Athletic, sent a tweet about how only white members of the Red Sox were going. David Price retweeted that, saying, I just feel like more than 38,000 people should see this tweet. And then he seemed to kind of walk back, saying, well, what I meant by that was this was an insensitive tweet that should be seen by more people. I don't want to be unfair to David Price, but does that sort of sequence in the narrative he's created around, does that pass the smell test, or did someone get to David Price and say, you don't want to go into this, tone this down, let's just put this away right now?
I definitely think he heard from people. I mean, anytime you see those tweets that go out in that kind of succession, I have no idea what happened with him behind the scene. But I would imagine that he realized he may have stepped in it. And he's saying that it's an insensitive tweet. But why is it insensitive if he's calling out the fact? It's the fact. There are several White Sox members who are white who are going. And why is that so terrible if we surface that and talk about it? Some people will say, the very surfacing of it is the problem. You're creating division by talking about these divisions. And I have a fundamental problem with that because what you're doing is you're silencing the conversation. And when I think about the players, the black players, the Latino players who are not, I don't know if any white players are abstaining from visiting the White House. There might be one person, I believe, and I think there's one player of color who's going. But if the public thinks that those players of color are not talking about this behind closed doors, then I think we're all fooling ourselves.
Dan Lebowitz, I actually have to, there's so much to get to. I wish we had 30 minutes for this convo. Adrian Walker wrote a column in the Boston Globe in which he pointed out, among other things, that the Sox are not your standard issue World Series winner. They were the last team to integrate. Famously, they just pushed for the Yawkey Way name change because of Tom Yawkey's baggage around racial issues. Also, the Red Sox launched recently that Take the Lead campaign with other Boston teams after a visiting player said he was called the N-word at Fenway. Is going to the White House the way they are with this, is that going to undercut their efforts to grapple with problematic race-related aspects of the team's past?
I think that what you have here is the complexity of the issue, right? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid point. It is going to create, for many people, a difficulty in moving this conversation forward. I also think that in many respects, maybe the Sox are looking at it as, you know, we respect the right of any player that doesn't want to go, and we're going to respect the right of any player that wants to go, and we want to start some sort of a centrism conversation around movement of this conversation. If we can't get people to even address the conversation because we have everybody over here and everybody over here, and no one wants to talk about conflict resolution or centrism or how we get to better. How do we get to a better version of ourselves? I think that's the conversation the Sox have to think about moving forward. It's not just a black, white, Latino conversation. It's a conversation of what does collective betterment look like? Yeah. What does social welfare and social justice look like? And how do we drive that conversation by exemplifying centrism that moves towards a greater conversation so that we can understand the people that have been disenfranchised also have the right to say, I'm not going.
Before you pick up on Dan's point, I want to just read a quote from Tom Warner, the Sox chairman, who said that he thinks sports should be kept out of politics as much as possible. Little snippet of it, sports should be kept as apolitical as possible. People go to sporting events to forget about the issues they have to struggle with in their daily lives. It's not appropriate, I don't think, for the Red Sox to be either red or blue. What do you think of that argument?
Well, so when he says people, who is he talking? When he says that people go to sporting events to escape this, some people can't escape the experiences, their daily lived experiences. Ask Jesse Owens. Ask Jackie Robinson. I mean, ask people from contemporary sports figures some of the issues that they've confronted. So I have a big problem with that. I typically find that the people who say that may not have ever walked in the shoes of someone who's been called the N-word, who's been spat at. I mean, we were backstage talking about some of the experiences that our children are having in public school systems here in Boston. And they're dealing with racism. They're dealing with white privilege and white supremacy. And I know that's a tangential comment, but it's related in that when you tell someone, keep the politics out of it, what they're saying is, your fear for your life, your fear that you're not being treated equal, keep that away and just hit the ball. I have a problem with that.
Unfortunately, we've got to wrap it up there, but I'd be remiss if I didn't note that Tom Warner, I believe, stumped for John Kerry in 2004. So that was a political moment for him. Tina Opie, Dan Lebowitz, thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.